Well, as I mentioned on Monday, not too much went on, just a bunch of reading. And today, I don't know, it's probably going to end up being the same. I still have a lot to learn about this subject, and that's probably what it's going to be.
Are you a professional writer?
Mm-mm.
Are you interested in politics or government?
Mm-mm.
Are you interested in anything?
Mm-mm.
Could you touch your nose for me?
Mm-mm.
Lisa, after meeting your father, I've decided to award you an additional 5 points.
Congratulations. You and your family are going to Washington.
Woohoo! Who would have guessed reading and writing would pay off?
So, as I mentioned, pretty much been reading all morning, but I thought I'd take a break and talk about the Arduino Pro Mini and FTDI, which is kind of confusing if you've never messed around with it. And it's even more confusing on a MacBook Pro. So, I'll talk about that. But first, I'm going to go and I'm going to grab some grandpa snacks from Trader Joe's, aka Stale cookies. Then I'll be back and we'll have a discussion. Alright, so to get into it, I'm not going to go into super detail. I mean, there's plenty of other videos on the web that like talk about the details of like serial communication and all that nitty-gritty stuff, TTL, etc. FTDI is essentially just a company that sort of specializes. It's a semiconductor company, and they specialize in USB communications actually as well, along with other RS-232 style serial connections. And FTDI is not that confusing, but if you're on a Mac, like, it's a pain in the butt. I think some Windows computers also had some problems. More specifically, like FTDI got in trouble. Anyway, there's quite a few different FTDI devices. Here is one that allows, this is from Adafruit. It's called the FTDI Friend. I didn't have luck with this thing. I installed the FTDI drivers, and yeah, for some reason it doesn't want to work with the Arduino Pro Mini, which is actually from Adafruit. And oh, never mind. Sorry, this is the Sparkfun. I think for some reason, because the board was blue, I always thought this thing was from Adafruit. No wonder the Adafruit one doesn't work. So the Adafruit on the FTDI Friend has the RX and TX swapped, I believe. Please don't quote me on that. You need to look it up yourself. But anyway, I've essentially added headers to my okay, not gonna show this off. Okay, so the actual FTDI connection is gonna happen right here, and I also have the Sparkfun one that's called the, let's see, FTDI Basic. There you go. All right, so this is the one that actually worked, probably because it's from the same producer. So you essentially just plug it in just like this, and now you actually have the ability to send hook this up to USB, and then it'll actually allow you to program the Arduino Pro Mini. Yeah, so let me show you what that looks like. Alright, so there's a handy tool called USB Prober. I'll add a link to it in the video description, but I've essentially just attached to my FTDI Basic to the Arduino Pro Mini, and then I just have a basic USB cable connected to it. Plug it in, and that's what you should see. FT232R, and the 232 is just the chip on the FTDI chip. And these are pretty It's a pretty basic chip, and you can read more about that by just searching online. But anyway, that's what you want. And then what you'll do is go into Arduino or whatever your environment is that you're using. You want to make sure you set board to Arduino Pro Mini, which I've done. Then I have the 3.3 version at 8 megahertz, so select that, and it's the 328. And then you should be able to, should have this option. So if you don't, then something's messed up. Your drivers aren't working properly, because that should be there. And then you just want to do upload, and that's about it. Then you should see the results, and I'll put those up too. So this is what you want to see if you successfully wrote data to your Arduino or whatever over FTDI. And you can see all this debug data by going to, so I just went to Arduino preferences, and then you can click this show verbose output during upload, and just make sure that's checked and hit OK. And I just sent a simple example over, the LED blink tutorial. Just sketch, or new examples, basics, blink. So I haven't tried it lately, but I was also able to get one of these knockoff ones. I bought this on eBay like about a year ago. It's the YP0L. But anyway, this requires like a special driver, which is hard to find. So I'll actually add that to the video description as well, along with some more documentation. Maybe I'll put that in my Patreon as a Patreon post with some notes, because it took me quite a while to find those. There's another one. So this is like another cable. I believe I was able to get this to work too, using the driver that I'll link to. Anyway, that's very short introduction to FTDI. Like I said, most of the pain comes from just being on a MacBook Pro and dealing with the drivers, FTDI drivers. But apparently the drivers are working, and I'm also, let's see what version of OS X I'm using right now. So I'm on Sierra version 10.12.1, and the FTDI drivers from FTDI are working after the reboot and everything. I also installed AVR Dude via Homebrew. So if you don't know what Homebrew is, it's a package manager similar to Fink. If you ever use that, or apt-get on Linux. And if you just do brew install AVR Dude, that'll actually give you AVR Dude, so you can mess around with it via the terminal. And AVR Dude is what the Arduino interface is using when it uploads to the board via the FTDI chip. So you might need to make sure you have AVR Dude installed. If not, you might get some problems. So just double check that. One other thing, sorry.
You have my undivided attention.
I went ahead and moved mine. I did this a while back and I just remembered. So if you actually have inside of your extensions, if you actually have an Apple FTDI driver, you might want to remove that, or just rename it old and move it out of the folder. But there's instructions on Sparkfun that I'll link to that show you how to do that. So I realize a lot of my audience right now is not technologically savvy. So I wanted to go and explain a little bit more about these things. Let's see if I can get this to focus, because it's kind of cool and it's not that hard to understand. So on this thing, there's essentially 6 pins, and that is where the signals are being sent through. But each one of these pins, so as I mentioned earlier, FTDI is a company that specializes in serial communications. This is nothing but a serial connection between here. And there's a standard for how the serial connection works, and it's known as RS-232. So if you go to Wikipedia and you look up RS-232, you can actually understand each one of these pins. So I've actually written it out so it's easier to see. So these are the 6 pins. and you'll see that there is, let's see if I can look at this and talk about it. So DTR, in electronics they use a ton of acronyms essentially. So DTR, if you were to go to Wikipedia, you can look that up. You can just search the page for RS-230 in the RS-232 page, and you can see what DTR is, which is essentially data terminal ready. So it's like a ready command. RX1, TX0, those are essentially just, those two pins rather, are just received data and transmitted data. So received data will come in on one, transmitted data will come in on another one. All right. And then the 3v3, that's just the amount of voltage that's getting sent through that pin, because you can actually carry voltage. So that's how, actually on a USB cable, that you can actually power things with USB because voltage is able to come through on one of the pins. Same as FTDI. So on one of the pins, the voltage is coming through, and it just happens to be 3.3 volts, and that's what that represents. CTS is essentially clear to send, a signal that essentially says, okay, now I've transmitted or received data, now it's clear to send some more data. And then ground is pretty self-explanatory. It just goes to your ground, common ground. And that's it. Today was a bust. I ended up getting the FTDI Basic working like one time, but that was it. After that single time and a restart of the computer, it just didn't work anymore. I'm not quite sure what happened, but that kind of put me at a loss of like actually completing anything on the Pro Mini today. Pretty much debugged everything, and even like went into like removing extensions and disabling CSR util to be able to remove extensions from the system folder. Yeah, at this point I think I'm gonna get another computer and try tomorrow.
$5,000?
You only have 10 seconds to decide, sir.
This is the best computer in the world and always will be, right?
Absolutely. Just run the deed to your house through here.
You are on your
5th
mortgage.